A silence so heavy it seemed to crush the air settled across the glass-walled boardroom as the final attorney slowly closed a thick binder and whispered the words no one had expected to hear. 25 of the country's most brilliant corporate lawyers had spent 3 exhausting weeks searching every contract, every amendment, every financial record, and every legal precedent. Their conclusion was devastating. The $500 million acquisition that had taken 4 years to build was legally impossible to save. The signatures were valid, the deadlines had passed, and one overlooked provision meant the entire deal would collapse before the market opened the next morning. Hundreds of employees would lose their jobs, investors would lose millions, and the company's future would disappear in a single business day. The CEO sat frozen, unable to speak, while everyone around her quietly accepted defeat. Yet no one noticed the quiet single father standing near the doorway, carrying nothing more than a box of archived documents and a habit of paying attention when everyone else had stopped looking. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change lives, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so you can continue this journey with our community. Cecilia Rowan had earned a reputation that few executives could match. She had transformed a struggling technology infrastructure company into one of the fastest-growing firms in North America. Investors admired her discipline, competitors respected her determination, and employees often feared her impossible standards. She believed excellence demanded sacrifice because she had sacrificed nearly everything herself. Her marriage had ended years earlier after endless weekends at the office replaced family dinners and vacations. Since then, work had become the only place where she believed she could still win. She rarely smiled during meetings, rarely accepted excuses, and expected every person around her to perform with the same relentless intensity. The acquisition waiting to close represented far more than profit. It would secure thousands of jobs, expand the company's research division, and allow years of innovation to continue. If it failed, layoffs would begin within weeks. Cecilia knew every employee by numbers and departments, but deep inside she also understood that behind every number stood a family, a mortgage, children in school, and dreams depending on the company surviving. The legal department had recruited 25 elite attorneys from different firms to protect the transaction. They were specialists in mergers, taxation, compliance, international law, and commercial litigation. Every expert agreed that the hidden defect inside the agreement could not be repaired. A forgotten clause buried inside an older licensing contract invalidated a critical transfer of intellectual property. Without those rights, the entire acquisition became worthless. People slowly packed their briefcases. Some quietly apologized to Cecilia before leaving. Others simply lowered their eyes, unwilling to watch someone lose everything she had worked for. The board members discussed emergency bankruptcy strategies. Financial advisors called investors. Public relations teams drafted statements preparing the public for disaster. No one noticed Graham Holloway. Graham worked in the records department on the lowest administrative salary in the building. Most executives barely remembered his name. He spent his days organizing decades of contracts, scanning forgotten agreements, restoring damaged files, and making sure historical records remained searchable. Years earlier, he had studied law at university, but life had changed when his wife passed away after a long illness. Overnight, he became the only parent to his 7-year-old daughter, Ivy. Medical bills forced him to leave school before graduation, and he accepted the first stable job he could find. He never complained. Every afternoon after work, he picked Ivy up from school, helped with homework, cooked dinner, and read bedtime stories before preparing lunches for the next morning. People assumed he lacked ambition because he rarely spoke. The truth was much simpler. He had learned that listening often revealed more than speaking. As employees hurried through the records room searching for archived files requested by lawyers, Graham quietly noticed something unusual. One folder carried an old handwritten notation that did not match the digital archive. The electronic system labeled the contract as superseded. The handwritten note simply read, "Retained under Amendment 4." Curiosity made him pause. He carefully opened the aging folder. Inside rested several forgotten amendments attached with fading clips. Most people would have assumed they were duplicates. Graham had spent years organizing documents and immediately recognized that the formatting differed from the official copy stored digitally that he began reading. His heart started beating faster. One amendment referred to an exception buried inside another agreement signed almost 12 years earlier. That exception allowed intellectual property rights to remain transferable if operational continuity could be proven through uninterrupted service agreements. None of the lawyers had examined that amendment because the digital archive incorrectly categorized it as obsolete. Instead of celebrating, Graham questioned himself. 25 accomplished attorneys had concluded the deal was impossible. Surely he had misunderstood something. That he reread every page, then he read them again. The language remained clear. That he quietly carried the folder upstairs, unsure whether anyone would even allow him into the executive conference room. Several security staff politely tried to redirect him, assuming he had entered the wrong floor. Graham calmly explained that he believed the legal team might want to review one historical amendment. They almost thanked him and sent him away until one exhausted junior attorney recognized the archive label. The documents reached the conference table. Within minutes, every attorney who had been leaving returned to the room. The atmosphere transformed from resignation into intense concentration. Legal dictionaries reopened. Laptops covered every inch of the table. Specialists compared signatures, filing dates, registration numbers, and historical corporate structures. Hour after hour passed beneath the bright afternoon sunlight pouring through enormous windows. Nobody noticed the passing time. Finally, the senior attorney leaned back with tears quietly gathering in his eyes. The forgotten amendment was authentic, the transfer remained legally enforceable, the acquisition could proceed exactly as planned. The impossible had become possible because one overlooked records clerk refused to ignore a handwritten note. Relief swept through the building like a wave. Executives hugged each other. Investors immediately reversed emergency decisions. Employees who had spent the afternoon fearing unemployment slowly realized their futures had been restored. Cecilia watched Graham standing alone near the doorway, still holding the empty archive box he had carried upstairs. For the first time in years, she realized how many people inside her own company remained invisible simply because their job titles sounded ordinary. She approached Graham expecting gratitude to flow toward him. Instead, she found remarkable humility. That he insisted the lawyers deserved credit because they had verified the discovery. He explained that records only mattered because someone eventually needed them. He even apologized for interrupting the meeting. That apology stayed with Cecilia long after everyone else had gone home. The following afternoon she quietly visited the records department for the first time since becoming CEO. She noticed aging computers, broken shelving, poor lighting, and employees working with incredible care despite receiving almost no recognition. She realized departments supporting the company's foundation had been neglected because they produced no dramatic quarterly reports. Over the following weeks she learned more about Graham without asking for special investigations. She simply observed. Every afternoon at exactly 4:30, Graham left on time, never requesting overtime. Some managers had criticized his lack of flexibility. Cecilia eventually discovered the reason. That he raced across town every day to collect Ivy before the school's late pickup fee began. On weekends he volunteered at the local library repairing donated books because Ivy loved reading stories rescued from damaged shelves. When co-workers experienced family emergencies, Graham quietly swapped schedules without expecting favors in return. He had spent years making other people's lives easier while asking almost nothing for himself. Cecilia found herself reflecting on her own leadership. She had rewarded visibility instead of character. She had celebrated loud achievements while overlooking quiet loyalty. Somewhere along the journey toward becoming an exceptional executive, she had forgotten how to notice extraordinary people. Several months later the acquisition officially closed. Financial news celebrated Cecilia as the brilliant CEO who had rescued a historic transaction. Television interviews praised the legal team. Headlines called it one of the greatest corporate recoveries in recent memory. Almost nobody mentioned Graham. That bothered Cecilia more than she expected. The company's annual gathering held beneath bright afternoon skies in a public park instead of a luxury ballroom. She surprised everyone by refusing to begin with financial achievements. Instead, She told the story of an anonymous employee who noticed what experts had overlooked because he cared enough to examine forgotten details. Then she invited Graham and little Ivy onto the stage. Neither expected applause, yet thousands of employees rose to their feet. The standing ovation continued so long that Graham became overwhelmed with emotion. Ivy looked around, confused about why so many strangers were cheering for her father. Graham simply knelt beside her and smiled through tears. Cecilia announced something even more surprising: the company would establish a new leadership principle requiring every executive to spend one day each month working alongside departments rarely seen by senior management. Records, maintenance, reception, security, mail services, customer support, and facilities teams would all receive direct executive participation. She also created scholarships for single parents pursuing education while raising children alone. The first scholarship carried no executive's name. It was called the Holloway Opportunity Fund. Graham tried to decline the honor, insisting many others deserved recognition. Cecilia gently explained that true humility was exactly why he deserved it. Years passed, the company continued growing, but employees noticed a deeper change than profits. Executives began greeting receptionists by name. Maintenance staff attended planning meetings when building improvements affected their work. Archivists received modern technology. Customer support representatives influenced product decisions. Quiet voices finally mattered. The culture changed because one overlooked employee had reminded everyone that greatness often hides behind ordinary routines. Ivy eventually graduated from law school, inspired not by courtroom dramas or famous attorneys but by watching her father quietly preserve truth inside dusty boxes that nobody else valued. At her graduation ceremony she thanked him for teaching her that integrity does not depend on titles. It depends on choosing to care when no one is watching. Cecilia sat in the audience that afternoon with tears quietly filling her eyes. She realized the greatest victory of her career had never been saving a $500 million acquisition. It had been learning that leadership begins by recognizing the humanity standing in front of you every single day. Before this story ends, leave a meaningful comment telling us what touched your heart the most. Was it Graham's humility, Cecilia's willingness to change, or the reminder that every person deserves to be seen and valued? If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that the world often celebrates the loudest voices, but history is quietly changed by ordinary people who keep doing the right thing even when no one notices. A forgotten document, a patient heart, and one father's quiet integrity saved far more than a business deal. They restored hope, transformed a leader, protected thousands of families, and proved that the smallest act of careful kindness can echo through countless lives for years to come.